in this video, we are going to be talking about some exciting news that's happening today. Moderna is going to regulators in the United States and Europe to ask for approval of its COVID-19 vaccine. And the reason that they're doing this is because they are confident enough in the safety and efficacy of their vaccine that they feel like they can do this. And so what's happened is that they've had a phase 3 clinical trial happening. This has enrolled over 30,000 patients. And so in this 30,000 patient cohort, you either received a placebo, which does nothing, or the active vaccine that Moderna is testing. And it's considered double blind, which means that as a patient or as the doctor or nurse who is actually administering the vaccine or placebo, you don't know whether or not it's a vaccine or placebo. So this makes a lot of bias taken out of these studies to make it as objective as possible. And so what the findings of this phase 3 clinical trial have shown is that the vaccine is 94.1% effective. And so, you see this term tossed around a lot. And so what it really is meaning is that within the 30,000 group of patients, 196 of them developed symptomatic cases of COVID-19. And if you were to take that 196 group of people who had symptomatic infections, 185 of them had taken the placebo, whereas only 11 of them had taken the active Moderna vaccine. So another way of looking at this is if you had been in that 30,000 group of patients and you took the active Moderna vaccine, you were 17 times less likely to get a symptomatic infection of COVID-19. And so this is some really great news. And then in addition to that, within that 196 group of patients who got an actual infectious or a symptomatic infection of COVID-19, 30 people had cases that were considered severe, meaning that they had to go to the hospital to receive additional attention because they had difficulty breathing or some other issues. And so within that group of 30 people, none of them had taken the active Moderna vaccine. So the severe cases were only people who took that placebo, and this is like what we're already seeing because there is currently no vaccine on the market that's been all the way approved, and so the placebo patients were still developing these severe cases, whereas none of the patients who had received the active Moderna vaccine developed a severe case of COVID-19. So this means that we're a lot less likely to see severe cases happening, and we're also a lot less likely to see any symptomatic cases happening of the coronavirus infections. So this is all what the statistics have told us thus far. In addition to that, we've seen that the efficacy has been consistent across age, gender, race, and ethnicity. So that's more good news. And the only side effects that we've seen thus far have been pain around the injection sites, as well as headaches or fatigue. So these have been mild symptoms, nothing severe. And in addition to that, people might be wondering, what is it going to look like if I get vaccinated? And so the way that these vaccines work is that there are these 2 doses you receive. So you'll get an initial dose on the first week, injection, and then 4 weeks later you will receive a second dose of the vaccine. And then after your second dose of that vaccine, in this phase 3 clinical trial, what they did is they let 2 weeks pass so that the body could fully develop immunity to this virus, and then they looked at who was getting these active COVID-19 infections or these symptomatic infections. So that is the data that's available to us. It is some really great news, but again, it does take quite a while for people, even after you've been vaccinated, to have developed this immunity. So it's very important that we all still continue to remain vigilant and practice social distancing and wearing masks and everything that the health officials have told us to do. Another point that I wanted to touch on this video is how is this vaccine working, because there's a lot of confusion, I think, about what's going on inside of our cells when we begin to administer genetic material. And so within your cells, you've got a nucleus. That nucleus is a bank vault that contains your DNA. Your DNA is something that's very sacred to you and to all of your cells, because that is what makes you you. And so this vaccine is not touching that DNA. This vaccine is providing mRNA, which is stuff that would be outside of that nucleus, but still getting actively translated into proteins by ribosomes. So If we were to take a look at one of your cells that was just vaccinated using Moderna's mRNA vaccine, what happens is that this genetic material, the mRNA, is going to enter the cytoplasm of the cell. The nucleus is going to still be there with the DNA. Nothing's happening to that DNA. But within the cytoplasm, you're going to have these ribosomes, which are these little units that will actually take that genetic material and encode a protein. And so what Pfizer and BioNTech and Moderna have been working on is figuring out, if we're going to encode a protein in your cells, what kind of protein should we make that would be able to help your body's immune system learn how to identify what an actual coronavirus looks like. And so in the coronavirus, we've known that there's these spike proteins. These are spike proteins have receptor binding domains. There's a lot of key features that these spike proteins have on them that we can encode into an mRNA that can go into a cell. And so the way that these viruses or the way that the vaccines work is they basically are encoding for something that would be a feature of the coronavirus, but not the whole coronavirus, just a part of it. And so once the mRNA has been administered to one of your cells, inside it's able to have that cell start making, maybe the little receptor binding domain, and then secrete that receptor binding domain into the bloodstream. And then once there's enough quantity of the protein of interest, your immune system, specifically B cells and T cells, are able to recognize it and create antibodies and have a bunch of these defense strategies in place so that if you ever did see the real coronavirus, then your body knows exactly how it needs to fight it off. And that's what gives people that 17 times advantage of not getting a symptomatic case of COVID-19, because their B cells and T cells already know how to fight it off really well. So that is the key takeaway as to how this works. We're not touching the DNA. We're just giving your cells and your immune system a leg up and learning how to identify and fight off the real bad guy without actually showing you the real bad guy. We're teaching ourselves how to make a little part of the bad guy. And that's part of the reason why you need to have those 2 doses, is that just one vaccine or one dose isn't enough to generate enough of the protein of interest inside of your cells to have your immune system recognize or figure out how to fight it off. So that's the reason why we need those 2 doses, is that we're being very careful and also giving your body enough time to learn how to attack and defend itself. And that is the key takeaway here. So I'm going to wrap things up with that. Thank you all for watching. Again, please, even though we have a vaccine in sight, or multiple vaccines now from Pfizer as well as BioNTech and Moderna, it's very important that we continue to practice social distancing, wearing masks, and listening to what health officials have told us to do. Thank you all for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and take care.